Much for all these responses. I ask no follow-up questions. Okay, so we will now move to the last part of the convention, and now I take the floor as a member of the committee to pose questions on Article 16, family relations, and I have a few items that I want to cover here. So first, I'll start with a very difficult subject, which was mentioned throughout the day, but not very closely, that of child marriages, or the way that you refer to it, juvenile marriages. And I'm really sorry, but it's regrettable that it seems that nothing was done between the last periodic report on this issue, even though it was the issue that was dealt with in our concluding observations. And this is even more regrettable in light of the positive political will that we were already noticing throughout the day on other areas, primarily, for example, in the area of violence against women, Istanbul Convention, and so on. Needless to say, it obviously affects more the Roma people, much higher prevalence of child marriages within that community than in other communities in your country. And here we're faced with the phenomenon, at least from my perspective, that the law on minimum age of marriage is actually not bad. And it even restricts the possibility of marriage. The age of marriage is 18, and then below 18, between 16 and 18, it's only with the court permission, and parental consent is not enough. And there are even criminal sanctions, whoever violates this law, but the reality apparently is vastly different. And one factor is probably the lack of mandatory registration of marriage. And we are already aware, it was brought up throughout the day, that there is a very big problem of registration in Macedonia, in many areas. Now, are you contemplating to obligate registration of marriages? And by that, perhaps, helping to enforce the prohibition of child marriages? And how are you currently enforcing this prohibition? I need clarification whether Article 197 of the Criminal Code, is this the only provision to apply to child marriages? Because it was not clear to me. It seems a bit narrow. In my reading it, in your from what you explained in your report to us, it addresses only extramarital life with a child, and that only covers ages 14 and 16. But what about prohibition of entry into extramarital life or marrying between 16 and 18? It does not seem to be covered in that article. Does this cover people who marry and not just live together with a child? And can you supply us with figures of criminal proceedings under this provision? Had there been any convictions, any charges and any convictions on this criminal law? Another emerging phenomena which we heard about is that of buying brides, which seems to apply to child brides from less developed parts of the country. Is the government aware of this, what seems to be like an emerging form of perhaps domestic human trafficking? Now, the problem of unregistered child marriages has two facets, which are both problematic. And the way to approach them may seem a bit contradictory, because first the state must act to prevent it, including by enforcement of the criminal sanctions, and then there is a need to protect the child who was in fact a wife, and if that relationship ends, she must be given and protected her financial rights, her social rights, maybe rights related to children who perhaps were born in this illegitimate union, but after the fact, you have to face the consequences of this. So what regulations, what arrangements do you have to protect rights of child brides, or just generally people in unregistered marriages or living together without marriage. We actually asked about that in the list of questions and issues, and there was no answer provided to that. I would like to touch upon the issue of property, which again was already mentioned throughout the day, and here too I do not quite understand. You referred to the need to amend inheritance laws and marital property laws so that women can become landowners. But it seems to me from what I heard and read is that the law itself, once again, is fine. And the law does not discriminate. So please elaborate on that. My understanding was that it's the problem, it's the social problem of communities and families who, under traditional norms, preclude women from realizing the rights that the law does provide them. More specifically, with respect to property relations, the marital property regime in your country is one of community property, meaning that when couples separate or divorce, both are eligible to half of the property that was accumulated during the marriage. Please elaborate on what exactly this property refers to. Does it also cover pension rights or other intangible forms of property, such as savings, severance payments, work social benefits, or even future earning potential? Is that also part of what is to be divided upon divorce? And I will stop here and let's see if there's need for follow-up. Thank you.